Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that can shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 44-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Kathy, 52-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum. And change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present. Hi, Kathy.
Hey, Laura, how you going?
I am good. I'm excited to talk to our guest, Bron, today, and I believe you know Bron rather well from your blogging era. Is that right?
I do. We used to blog, back in the day when blogging was a thing, before Instagram, before Facebook. That's how we all communicated, and it was, it's kind of really sweet, and it was really innocent and lovely. I mean, there's all kinds of horridness out there, but it was nice. But enough about that. Bron is a writer and she has been writing for over 10 years. She's a passionate advocate for working parents. She writes extensively about life balance, common sense, being that good enough mum. Through her parenting website, Mum Life, Bron aims to help parents of tweens and teens, so older kids, like not the babies, but the older ones, really to flourish so that they can nurture enlightened, passionate kids who can make a difference.
Love that. Hi, Bron. Welcome to The Change. It is lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, we're really excited to chat with you about your journey through, I guess, parenting, through writing about parenting to now moving to that other side around that non-participation parenting, as I kind of call it for me.
Yeah, so parenting of big kids where the participation levels are a lot lower in certain ways, physically. Different. Yeah, that's right. Different.
Aren't we?
Yeah. Very different.
Yes. So, Bron, you've been through quite a bit of change in the last 2 years, with two children doing the HSC, one after the other, then one moving out. Tell us how those experiences have changed you or how you see yourself.
It's been a very big couple of years. I wouldn't recommend back-to-back HSCing. And in actual fact, I saw in one of the parenting groups, a mother was saying, they were talking about age gaps and stuff. And I did want to jump in there and say, think of the HSC, because everyone's saying, when they start school. And I'm thinking, oh, no, it's the business end you've got to worry about. So it is a lot. And our third is actually about to go into year 11. So we're kind of like HSC.
Oh, gosh.
Fortunately, none of my children are particularly, academic in the sense that they're all bright, but they really couldn't give a shit. So
you are,
of course.
So it's like it's not as stressful around the home as I'd probably like, to be honest. But the big change, of course, is that year 11 and 12 are really where they definitely start to pull away. They think they're pulling away in the earlier teen years, but they're definitely pulling away in those sort of senior kind of teen years. And as a parent, it's kind of it's finding your place within that. You have that earlier teen struggle where they're trying to pull the independent card, and that's tricky and tumultuous and kind of awful, to be honest. But emotionally, it is kind of fraught when they get to that year 11, year 12. They're driving, they're off with their friends. You really hardly see them, and then they move out. And all of a sudden, you're kind of like, I like my child. I miss my child. The rose-coloured glasses come on big time.
Absolutely. I found that too when, we had, our eldest was around a bit longer than your eldest, but also, moved out and kind of moved out quite suddenly for us. And I guess we thought it was coming, but we'd also moved house to a bigger house. So we thought would stay a bit longer. And so we made those changes as a family. And then, he moved out with his partner, and it's lovely, and it's a beautiful relationship, and he's living in but I found that really tricky because he moved in with his partner's family, and so I felt a little bit replaced, if I'm honest, which was never the case. Like, I've got to say that was all on me. They were my feelings. It's a really tricky change time, and there's lots of hormones happening around that time. There's lots of puberty hormones, and there's also lots of mum hormones.
Yeah,
It's like this really weird thing with nature where our children are going through puberty at the same time as those hormones are flooding into their little bodies. They're flooding out of our bodies, and we're kind of going through a second puberty.
Yeah. It's a clash. It's a bit of a clash.
Oh, it is gloves on, isn't it? Like there's a lot of emotion running around households, in those later years because I mean, we're not particularly stable ourselves, and it's very hard to parent the completely unstable teen when you're not 100% stable yourself. I mean, what were we thinking having our children older in life? Because I just kind of went bang straight up against it. With a lot of us, hitting that perimenopausal stage right in the high school years.
Yeah.
It's game on in houses across Australia right now. But I think, one of the things that's been particularly tricky is, when the son turned 18 in May of his HSC year, I get that I'm an adult. I'm an adult. And I'm kind of like, at the end of the day, they say you're an adult, but that's just a legal thing, Max. You're an adult when you'll be at 25, the frontal, cortex is in place. We'll talk adult then. Until then, you think you're an adult, but you're not,
Yeah.
They think they're ready to fly and be and do, and you're not.
No.
And I remember saying to my kids, look, I'll know when I'm done, because they always tell me, you're done here, Mum. It's all, I'll know when I'm done when you know yourself better than I know you. And that isn't yet. You don't know yourself as well as I know you just yet. But it is coming. I can feel the shift.
Yeah.
But I think that's really when a mum knows, I can definitely step back now. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then also when you're financially independent, get back to me, because I'm still supporting you, man.
Yeah, that's
you're not
right.
an adult.
Yeah.
When you can insure the car in your own name rather than using mum or dad as the primary insurer on the car so that you get cheaper insurance, then come back to me,
You're an adult.
Yeah.
So when you're self-supportive and doing all those adult things. But I love the fact that they try, and I love the fact that they think that they're there. It's individual kids, of course.
Yeah.
We always come back to that.
We really kind of, I guess, want to talk about, and we've started to touch on it, that change you went through. And you were a writer, and you wrote about your children when they were, well, not so much your children, but wrote about parenting.
And my children, because
when they were
little. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to know you through your writing and your parenting writing. And then we moved from that participation parent, that really hands-on kind of, into what I call the otherhood. We're still mothers and we'll always be their mothers, but we're in that otherhood kind of stage. What kind of changes did you notice around, like, for you personally?
It's actually interesting because when I was initially blogging, and I remember writing a post about my youngest turning 2. So that's how long I've been writing about my kids and life and stuff. But back then it was a lot more anonymous. And I even to this day still write under a pseudonym, because I was protecting my kids' names, and no one really knew who we were. So it was a very different kind of thing. As soon as social media kicked in, probably about 4 years, maybe 5 years into me having a blog, I very much stepped back from the whole thing, because I'm not a sharer. I'm not a, you know what I mean? I'm not one to put my life or my kids' life out there, but still love writing and still like to tease out the big points of life through writing. And so I kept writing in the parenting space. But again, I was still kind of, it's funny because I don't see myself as the kind of writer that we have today. And even if you look at the website that I run, Mum Life, it's still once removed. Like, I'm always writing about parenting, not necessarily my parenting, though I throw a lot of, like, you know, incidental things in. But one of the times I really got very truthful, and relates to what you were asking about, was the day I wrote an article that went completely viral, and it was about parenting the child that you have, not the child you want to have or the child you thought you had. And I think for me, that's the crux of the otherhood, moving from the young children still discovering who they are to suddenly knowing who they are. And I think how well you're doing it is how well you accept who they actually are. And they're telling you every day. And I know a lot of the conflicts that parents have with teens is because they still have an expectation of who they want them to be, and not who this kid is telling you that they are, practically begging. And, you know, still keeping your cap on for, let's stay sane here, you're a teen, you're a bit crazy. But I do feel that that is, to me, the difference between parenting the young children and all that involves, and what happens when they get older, and how well we cope and manage with it. Yeah.
And how did you cope with that move to parenting the child that you have rather than the child that you expected you might have? Because I know that has been challenging for me at various times. Like, I expected one thing and have a very different experiences, you know?
Ultimately, it's a coming to yourself kind of faith, because you suddenly realize they are not me. They do things differently to me. And really how much you butt up against that is how rigid you are yourself, I think, you know. I'm an extremely conscientious person, become less so via my son and one of my daughters, who is not conscientious at all. And that, to me, was probably my Achilles heel as a mother, and still is. You know, like, how I would go about something is very different to how he would. But as he's gotten older, I've had the luxury of being able to see that he figures it out in the end. He, you know, like, the things that matter to him get done. And just because he hasn't done that, it's probably because it didn't matter to him. It just mattered to me. So that's, you know, I think it's a very tricky thing, and something that you'll always be doing, perhaps, you know, as our children become adults, and then adults and adult, and, you know, you'll be a great grandmother probably still trying to figure that part of it out, because our children are not us. And for a long time, we kind of thought they were. And I think that is, you know, that push-pull that we all experience. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that we do spend a lot of time when our kids are younger saying things like, "Oh, he's just like you in this way," or he, you know, you try and, I guess, almost find the things that are like you in your child, or your husband or your partner in your child. And it's kind of like a fun game when they're little. Well, you know, he's got your laugh, or he's got your this, and then as they grow up, you kind of start to see them more as the independent humans that they are. But it's sort of like it's a hangover from when they are little, that you're sort of doing that comparison of who's like who in the family, or where you got that trait from. You know I trying really hard. My son's 13, my eldest, and my youngest is still only 6. So I'm trying very hard at this stage to sort of separate myself from them. They are very different to me, but I am still very much learning that.
Yeah, so you're butting up against that otherhood question.
Yeah.
And I find, because obviously I get a lot of emails from mums wanting advice, wanting me to write about something, research something, whatever. And I do find myself, I think the number one phrase that goes through my head when I'm in my work mode as a parent, mum, because it's quite separate, of course, you know, being a parent writer and being a parent, a little bit different. But I do find myself, the number one thing that goes through my head is, it's not about you. It's not about you. And, you know, high school is not a do-over for you. This is your child's experience with your child's personality and their expectations. It's not about you. So often, I think, as mums, in a way, we're kind of owed it to be about us because we put so much into it. But the fact of the matter is, it's just not, you know. So learning that and somehow managing to work that out, I think, is our number one goal as a mum. Yeah.
And it's a real change in perspective. Like, it's a real flip in how we think about ourselves as mothers and women. And I think we put a lot of our identity into, you know, like, if I see mothers in the playground, you know, well, I used to, because when you're in high school, you don't see people in the playground.
No, not there.
You don't go to the playground.
No.
But you see a lot of parents seeing their children successes or perhaps not successes, because I don't want to say failures, because that's not it. It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Everything is a learning opportunity. But you see those parents, and particularly mothers, whose identities are wrapped up in the success of their child and how perfect they are, or how great they are at whatever it is. And it's really flipping that in our own minds and really changing that perspective to be, we're not the center of this child's life. This is their life. This isn't our life.
Yeah, totally. And just to your point about the failure or whatever, because aren't we in that at the moment? Yeah. Oh, my child got 7 awards, and it leaves me cold. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is that, like, one kid gets that award, and 100 kids don't get the award. So are we saying 99 kids or 100 kids are the failure? Of course not.
No.
I think we need, and I don't know why it hasn't happened to this point, we need a real rethink about that whole way we award our children. And certain kids start getting awarded in kinder, and they get the award every single year. And why? Because they're reinforced. They're constantly, I'm good at this. Whereas every other kid, what are they supposed to think? I'm not good at this. I didn't get the award. Well, they're not, but that's what happens. But that's just an aside, because that is a real thing for me.
I agree. I mean, obviously, my kids are a lot younger, and they're still in that they get dojos in class or something, merit awards. It's all very, very focused on how they perform. And it's like the gamification or something of education and learning, where they're always getting points. Everything's about points. So I find it so hard, because now they don't want to do anything that doesn't have some kind of scoring system. And I think this cannot be good, right, for future life if you're not
good.
and where you just have to do things sometimes to learn or to enjoy, for enjoyment
To enjoy the
purposes.
process.
Yeah, enjoy the
To
process.
enjoy
I
the
do worry greatly about that. Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, one of the beauties of being like kind of like later along in the parenting thing is you do have the ability to look back and go, well, actually, my kid found their way themselves. For example, when my kid was your youngest sort of age, we were trying everything to get him into a sport. And not because, necessarily we thought it was a healthy thing to do or whatever, although it is, but because of all the things that come with sport, like teamwork and participation, community, and all those things. And he was just blatant, like rugby, we did taekwondo, we did all the things, and not one single thing was good for him. And then I think he was in like year 7, and he came home and said, I found my sport. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, all those things you're always going on about, teamwork. I said, yes. He said, I'm in the school musical.
Oh.
Okay, hang on. Yes, all the things that sport ticked off, that ticked off too.
Yeah.
And he said, and I'm going to walk there to the rehearsals every day and back, and there's your exercise, Mum. And I'm like, done. And we kind of realize, well, there's different ways to come at the same
For
thing.
sure.
And just because we're supposed to be a certain type of person through the system doesn't mean we're going to be, it doesn't mean to work out like that. Yeah.
I feel like when our kids are young, we do worry too much about things like that. We spent a lot of time worrying about our eldest son and social skills, and as he's got older, obviously he's still only 13, but he's come into his own a lot more. We worried way too much basically when he was in those early primary years, and we tried to facilitate play dates and things a little bit too much. So I can see that there's the sense you just need to let go a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. And he may well turn out to be the sort of person that doesn't like to socialize a lot. And that's okay too.
That's okay. Exactly. Not everyone, I think, because my husband and I are quite social people. Again, it's that case of projecting yourself onto your child and then realizing, no, he's totally different. He might only have, a handful of friends in the future. And that is fine if they are good, solid, trustworthy friends. It's very different.
You
He's
feel
a different
good
person.
about it. Yeah, if you're good within yourself, then even though you only need one friend. Or no,
correct. That's right. Absolutely.
And it goes back to what we were talking about very early on about the box ticking that you can do when they're little. We all have the boxes to tick, and we're all frantically trying to tick those boxes. And in many ways, it's quite freeing come the teen years, because you suddenly realise the teens have stomped all over the boxes. There's nothing to tick, and in as much as it is isolating to have teens because you can't really talk about it as much, it's also quite freeing for exactly the same reason. Stop ticking the boxes, look at the kid in front of you. What are we dealing with today? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little bit like, if we think about, when they're little, we do have those developmental rule books, like what to expect when you're expecting, or what to expect in the toddler years, and you do have more of a village when they're little, because, as you say, they're all kind of going through the same milestones at around about the same time. They're roughly walking at the same time, roughly talking at the same time, for the most part, But then as they get into those teen years, and that village when they're small, because everybody has those really common experiences and they're really shared experiences. So your village can be quite large, your mother's group can be quite large. I know for me, as my kids grew older, that village really shrunk.
Yes.
And that was a big change for me, because the issues that we were going through, the things we were facing with our kids were really different. And, every family was dealing with a very different, quite different issue. And so our village got smaller and smaller and smaller, and harder to find people to talk to. How did you deal with that kind of change?
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's definitely a thing. I mean, a lot of it centers around the difference between primary and high school, and how that's set up for actually seeing people and being involved. The big thing, I think, is that when kids are smaller, they're much more portable. You may have 1, 2, 3 kids, whatever. You can go to your mate's house. She's got kids roughly the same age. Get in there and do something. Have some fun, and you're there with your friends. And for years through the primary school years, every Friday at my place, anyone who was around would come. The mums, whatever, a couple of dads occasionally, but not the dads. And all the kids of all ages are just out the back in the pool or doing whatever. As they get to high school, the kids are not having a bar of that. I'm not going on a family thing. And then you've got I'll come, but I'm not going to come, and I won't come either. So I've got to drive that one to here and this one here, and then I can maybe come to your house. So just the logistics, I think, are the first part of the isolation. And then on top of that, yes, you have I'm going through something that, like, you're there telling me your kid got 7 awards in school. And that's actually become quite personal to me, because my child's struggling with a learning disability. Or it could be all different kinds of things. We don't mean to do it, but we do. Like, when things are good, you do want to share your friends' excitement, but the stakes feel so heavy that it's almost impossible to. Like, you're so dragged down by the busyness and the business of raising these teens that you worry so much about, more than when they were little, that it isolates you from any good news that your friend might have at that particular time. It might swing and roundabout around, the next couple of weeks, but that becomes very isolating. You tend not to share the good things as well as want to talk about the bad things, and then all of a sudden you're not talking at all. So that I have struggled with that. I'm a talker though, so generally I'm going to embrace that. I try to still be a point where people can come together, no matter how they're feeling or what they're dealing with. It's a matter of being open, and within certain close circles, we'll share whatever we're going through, for sure.
Yeah. And that's when I think, we talk about, as women, having friends at different, that are there for the season or reason, and I can't remember the other one, but how you have, those mums group friends that are great when your babies are little, or your primary school age kind of friends for that sort of social time. But it's when you have, it's your real friends, the ones that have been there forever and know you as a person, not just you as a mum, that I imagine come into great use and force, and when your kids are older and you need, that real sense of friendship back in your life.
And sometimes for me, that change with older kids also came with actually finding new friends. Like, so my closest, bestest friend is someone who came into my life when my kids were older. Like my kids were going year 10-ish, I think, was kind of around that age. And so we went through kind of the really, really tricky, tough HSC years together. And like, there's nothing that we don't share with each other. You know, we share the good and we share the bad.
That's
And
good.
we've had to have some really tough conversations. Like she had to once tell me, you know, my son was driving too fast with her kids in the car.
Wow.
Her kids were scared. And so she had to have a tricky conversation with me, and I had to have a tricky conversation with my kid. And that's a real change in how we parent. And yeah, it's just, and I also think, and not at all in any way to dismiss parents with younger kids, but you have to be there for them in the little years. You have to listen to the little conversations that annoy you beyond belief, you know, when they're coming to you and you just think, I just want 5 minutes to myself. But if you're not listening to them then, I found they don't come to you when they're bigger. They won't come to you because you weren't there for them when they were little. And it's that little kids, little problems, big kids. It's not that they're bigger problems, but the problems when they're bigger potentially have lifelong consequences as opposed to the little kid problems.
Yeah.
When the kids were younger, and I was at that stage, I was actually in a corporate job in the city, and I was long hours away from home a lot. And I remember saying to my mum, you know, when they were sort of like the naught years, because as I said, we've got our kids really close together, so they're kind of like a unit of 3 under 4. And I remember saying to my mum, oh my God, I should be at home with them, whatever. And she said, no, it's the later years that they're going to need you at home. So if you need to work now when they're little babies, and anyone can change their nappy, honey, and you can give them lots of cuddles when you see them. And then, you know, like as they get into school and stuff, to come home to someone kind of matters, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, as it happened, that's how it worked out for me. Only because when all three were finally in school, and we no longer had that sort of daycare thing, trying to figure out the holidays and all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh my God, how do I work a career around this?
Oh, it's so
As
hard.
everyone mum knows.
Yeah.
I thought I'm not prepared to do that. I know myself. I can't do that. The stress of this is going to kill me. I think I did it for 2 years. It was like, and so that's when I sort of started thinking, what else can I do? And that's when the writing and stuff came up. So in a lot of ways, my children precipitated a complete change in career for me, which turned out to be a great thing to do. Interestingly, as they've gotten older, I'm now kind of like, you know, I'm an old bird myself and I'm wanting something different now. I've been freelance writing from home for 12 years. I've got them through. I'm thinking, what's next for me? And I've realized that that's actually a theme in general as the kids have gotten older. I'm returning to myself. I'm returning to old friends I had before I even had kids who I haven't seen for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, we're contacting each other again. We're going for walks. It's a coming back to yourself. You're no longer the mother first and foremost, the human, the Bron first and foremost, and then the mum's in there, of course, and top of mind, but not the number one thing. It's kind of weird.
I kind of love that. I think it sounds amazing. And I think it's really important that you do get to come back to yourself and, you know, and be Bron again.
Like you can become less selfless, I think. Although, to be honest, it's something I worked on my whole parenting career, if you like. I'm not a person to feel a lot of guilt. I make my choices. I make them very thoroughly. I research. I make sure I'm very happy with them. And then I don't look back. Never was one for the mum guilt. Never thought, oh, you do what you have with what you've got at the time. And what comes out, comes out. Like, yeah. I do think there's a real tendency for parents to become engineers and want to engineer a life for their child. I'm going to put all these things in place. I'm going to move this around. I'm going to, kind of try to manipulate life in many ways. As I said, in many ways, trying to not work with the child they have in front of them. So for me, it wasn't that much of a coming to myself as it may be for another woman, but I definitely know it's coming up. You know, when your kids get older, did you find that, Kath? You get more space for you again?
Absolutely. I think Laura and I have talked about, it's like coming into your third act of life. You kind of, you know, first act being when you're a child, adolescent, coming into young person. Second act for me and for many women probably listening, the second act is really around that motherhood period, you know, that marriage, motherhood, buying a house, all of those responsibility things. And I know I found when I was in that responsibility phase, which I still am, looking back at my first act, thinking I really still wanted to be 21. But I didn't really. I just didn't want the responsibility that I had in the second act. But now that my kids, all three of mine have finished their HSC. Yay, and we're celebrating that. So I'm now able to come into that third act where I've got the support of a great husband who supports me to be able to find my career now and find me again after a long period of time where I was, you know, being there for the family. So
yeah, and I think our kids spark that a lot too, because of course they're coming into that stage of their life where they're looking for the next chapter and they're growing away from us. And in a way, we're kind of almost doing that alongside them. You know, what's next for me too? Like, as much as we talk to our kids, what happens next is what I'm always saying to them. You don't need to know what you're doing for life, but you do need to know what comes next. What comes next? What comes next? And of course, now I'm thinking, well, what comes next for me? And I'm very much in that headspace of thinking, as I said, I still have one to go for the HSC, but for me, like, one kid just feels like an absolute breeze. She hates it. A lot of focus. She's like, stop looking at me. We're not looking. Yes, you are. You're looking. The dynamics at home are so utterly different.
Because you've only got one at home at the moment.
At the moment, yeah. So my middle, so Max did his HSC and moved to the Gong to go to uni. So he moved away. Fully supported by his hardworking mother. And then my middle, Arabella, is she's just finished her HSC, but 2 days after she finished the HSC, she was on a plane to the Dominican Republic to go volunteering.
Wow.
She's actually been in Melbourne and the Gold Coast. We actually haven't seen her since her HSC. And then she'll come back for Christmas and stuff, and then she's actually going into the Army gap year. So she'll be gone as well. So we've kind of just had little Lottie at home for the last 6 weeks with her parents, being used to being surrounded by a very rambunctious and large, kind of family situation. We're now down to that only child.
Yeah.
And she says, God love her, I feel like I've been left behind.
Oh.
And well, yeah, I guess you would. I've not been the youngest child. I don't know what it feels like, but she very much feels like they get to go on with their life. I'm still stuck here with you, you know.
She'll get her turn. It's just that real change in dynamics, isn't it, at home?
Yeah, definitely. But I think she secretly quite loves it, you know, because because, you know, it's nice, you know. It's nice to have her
room.
Yeah.
If you, obviously, we've all got hindsight and we can all look back, and sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. If you were to look back, are there any things, any moments that you kind of can look back and think, oh gosh, I would change how I did that, or I would change that moment, or you just, you know, you roll with it?
So many. What parent wouldn't have like a list so long of oh God, if only I'd done that differently, or that, you know, every day we kind of, I mean, we're just fucking it up left, right, and center, really, aren't we? But the only thing, honestly, is sometimes some of the revelations that I had as a parent, I wish I'd come to sooner. And I think that would be the number one thing, because eventually we get there, don't we?
Yeah.
I think, you know, when he was little, and obviously still does, my son had very severe anxiety, and there was a lot of pressure and troubled, you know, like family life at that time to a degree. And it took me a bit too long, I think, to come to the realization that I needed to parent the child and not the anxiety. And we were coddling a lot to the anxiety, forgetting about the child that was actually, you know, underneath, you know. And I feel that, if I'd have come to that sooner, I think a lot of trouble would have been averted. And the fact is, as soon as we came to that conclusion, we kind of started to be, I would say, like a tough love kind of parent with the anxiety. And I remember having many conversations with Max about me being tougher than the things that he was scared of. So, and you're tougher than the things you're scared of, and all those kind of conversations that would have been really nice conversations with the little boy. You know what I mean? So if anything, that would be my big regret. But I don't have big regrets, if you like. Like I don't feel, I probably, now that we're older, and as soon as the kids were old enough to sort of be in their hometown and go, they're like, why did we move out of the inner city of Sydney? Like, why'd you move us out to the burbs? It's so awful here. I'm thinking, oh, why did we move? Why didn't we stay? We could have just been there now, with the kids running around. But hey, hindsight and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, really? Finally, Bron, thank you obviously so much for chatting to us today. But our podcast is called The Change, as you know, which is in part a reference to the midlife experience of all women. And we want to know, what is your experience or feeling towards the change, menopause, etc.?
The change. Well, I bought a small desk fan yesterday.
Oh.
And when I said to Bart, my husband, oh, I think I need a fan at night, it's so humid, he just looked at me and said, it's happening. So I've actually been I've been, okay, so hormonally, shall we say, I've been very lucky my whole life. I'm not a hormone sensitive person, and therefore skated through pregnancies, puberty, all the things quite nicely. And I do not, touch wood, I do not take that for granted. So far, I think with the perimenopause, again, true to form, I don't think there's been much on it for me. Every now and then I read an article that petrifies me and think I need to go on HRT. You know what I mean? Like but of course that's probably not the case. But I think that the main thing for me with the change is actually the acknowledgement, and I've tried to do this my life, the acknowledgement of a change, and not to just dismiss it, not to skate over it, not to push it to the side, to ask myself, what is my body trying to tell me here? And what does that emotionally mean to me and the way I am in the world? I can get a bit woo-woo actually in my everyday life, just quietly. It doesn't come out in my writing much, but it's there. And so for me, that has very much been a nesting of sorts, a little bit like we did when we were pregnant. And I think potentially when hormonal changes are happening, we feel the need to nest, to find comfort in how we are surrounded in our everyday life. I've become much more health focused in a gentle way. Not in I've got to lose weight, oh my God, I'm on the treadmill, but more I want to be strong and I want to be capable and I want to get a few more years out of these terrible knees I have. But I think ultimately at this stage in our life, the main thing for me is to be true to the person I've become and to sit with that, to give myself space and to stop having my head turned by all the silly things that life's telling me should have my head turned. So I have spent a couple of years really getting true on the values that I hold closest and what they mean to me, and to try to live my life every day with those values top of mind, and all the rest is noise. And it's quite comforting, actually. So I think I'm in a good place in that sense, and I think the change brings that on when we really listen to what is happening here. What is my body really telling me? It's not just the wrinkles, not just the mouth lines that are coming out of nowhere.
Not the fluff that I shave off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same. Chin hairs.
Chin hairs that, I don't know, they sprout.
So fluffy, but I haven't been game enough to do the shave thing.
Oh, the chin hairs that sprout overnight, you get them all and then the next morning you'll be sitting at the traffic lights. I've got tweezers everywhere, I tell you.
I know, and it's crazy. I'm actually a very fair person and without much body hair at all, like really very body hair. I have a moustache if I don't cut.
Same. Oh yeah,
what is happening here? And it's
dermaplane that baby off.
Yeah, no, I've got to work up the courage. I keep feeling that I'll be stubbled.
No,
no, it's actually all right. Yeah, it's okay. I promise you.
I'm hearing good things. So
yeah.
But
Well,
I mean, my big thing is, like, seriously, don't judge a woman sitting at the traffic lights feeling her chin,
oh,
because
yeah.
she has just found another chin hair.
Yeah, she's
Mm.
got some serious business to
Yeah,
attend to.
like,
Yeah.
find some tweezers for her.
Yeah, or just let them grow. Whatever works for you, I
Yeah,
think, whatever you
absolutely.
prefer.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, Bron, thank you so much. Yes,
Pleasure.
your wisdom in nesting through the menopause might be something I'm going to take on. I'm going to just nest through it,
Right.
regardless of the chin
What
hair.
else are we to do?
Oh gosh. I could sit and listen to Bron all day. I
Mm,
I just love listening to Bron, and
yeah.
even her woo-woo, as she says. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got a great way about her, very measured. A lot of what she said was very relatable, and even having, much younger kids, I could still kind of listen
Mm,
to what she said, and I can just imagine, how I will be in the future. And I think she
yeah.
had a lot of great things, a lot of good advice as well for,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. One of the big takeaways for me was about parenting the child that is in front of you,
Mm,
not parenting the child that you wish you had.
yeah. That's so true. I wrote that down too because I thought of I've made so many parenting fuck ups in my time, and I'm really only 13 years in, so I was spending more time for that. But yeah, I thought about that and how you want you want your kids to be happy, and you try so hard to facilitate that for them. Sometimes you don't really listen to what they're saying, and they're standing in front
Yeah.
of you. And like she said, and I think that her point was to kind of throw out the rule book and just listen. So I'm really going to take that on and try and focus on that more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, really just listen to what they're saying, not like put aside our own expectations of the situation
Mm,
and listen to what they're telling us,
mm,
is so important. And I also loved Bron's take on the change, that nurturing herself,
mm.
nurturing um, the
The
change
nesting as
and the
well. I love that.
nesting,
Yeah.
yeah, like really thinking about, that yes, it's a change, but it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have
Mm,
to be terrible. And also thinking about how she's moving into that next stage, into that third act, as we like to talk about,
mm,
you know, um, and she's thinking that as her kids are, you know, thinking about what's next for them, she's also thinking about, well, what's next for me? And
yeah.
that's so important. I don't think we do that enough. I think um, I know I certainly have invested a lot of years into raising our children, and that's part of who I am, and that was my identity for a long time, being a wife, a supportive wife, and nurturing mother. And it never occurred to me at any point to start thinking about what's next. Like, who am I
Mm,
when they don't need me anymore?
yeah.
They need me like that.
Yeah. I liked her thoughts on that too. I think a little bit different to you in the sense maybe that I've always been a bit selfish. I think that's a really awful thing to say. I don't
Not
know.
at all.
Um, in the sense that I remember even before I had kids, I was like, you know what? I'm only going to breastfeed for 6 months, and I'm going to go straight back to work, and I had all these like ridiculous things that I was only going to do. And with the breastfeeding, I did actually only breastfeed for 6 months per child, which I know is like against the law of breastfeeding or what have you. But I also I struggled going back to work actually, and it was really hard. And there's things I've kind of been the other way where I've put too much pressure on myself and haven't perhaps focused enough on just being in the moment with my kids. And I look back now and think I was an idiot, really. But what I thought too was really interesting what she said about the isolation. And I think you've
Mm,
mentioned this to me before. When your kids are older, you stop talking to, a lot of your friends because you're not going through those same phases. There's a
mm,
camaraderie, right? When the kids are little and you're like, whether you're a working mum or not, there's that sense of camaraderie, and they're toddlers are right little shits, or whatever, and they're incredibly challenging, and it's sort of funny. And there's a lot of social media, and even before social media there was the blogging content that was
yeah,
very, very relatable, and then suddenly is like a silence. And I'm coming into that phase now with Toby as a teenager, and having been a parenting writer and now no longer being one, it was like I don't want to do it either. I don't want to write about my
yeah,
kids anymore. It's too I don't feel that I need to, but also I don't want to, because they're coming into their own people, and
Mhm.
but that with that is that sense of isolation, and like you feel you can't share as much anymore, and she mentioned the logistical isolation I thought was really interesting, of kind of doing the taxiing around and having to take your big kids here on a Friday night and then over there on a Saturday. And I see that with, people I know in my life who have those older kids. They're just like taxi service,
Yeah,
for sport and social.
absolutely can be,
So hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
and
really good point.
you're never often in a place long enough to be able to make those connections,
Mm,
even though you might be at soccer or at football or at netball or whatever it might be. You literally just drop, run, race the other child somewhere else, drop, run back to there. You might, if you're lucky enough, get time to sit and watch the game on the sideline,
mm,
but you don't really talk to the other parents because you don't really know them to sort of say hi, or, you know,
yeah.
so when things kind of do get challenging, and, I mean, some people breeze through older kids, and
Mm,
like, good on them and all power to
for
them.
sure.
I would argue that probably most of us don't, and
Mm,
we mostly have our moments, but it can be quite isolating sometimes.
mm,
And especially if they're, big problems, lifelong
yeah,
consequential problems. And
sure.
you just never know when those issues are going to hit you, and
Mm,
yeah, so it's really about sort of being there, listening to our kids, and, making sure that we're there for them when they need us.
yeah. That's definitely something I'm sort of starting to feel too, that I just need to be around more, like, and
Mm.
just in case Toby wants to talk to me,
Yeah,
as opposed to I don't need to necessarily do as much for him now. It's just about being around for as
yeah.
and when he's ready to tell me something, or yeah, have a hug, which is becoming rarer by the day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You'll find those side by side conversations in the car,
Yes, the
those
car.
moments, those car conversations, that when I used to sort of be able to have the best conversations
Mm.
with, the 3 of my kids, because it wasn't that forced, like, I'm not sitting down staring at them in the face,
Yeah.
going, "Tell me this."
Yes.
You can just kind of have that casual chat and, kinda go, "Oh, right, okay."
Mm. Yeah.
And,
More natural.
and yeah, and sometimes it's a real, art to be able to go and keep that thought to yourself and go,
Yeah.
"Right, yeah, okay, cool, no worries." Um, yeah, so about that netball game on the weekend, and
Mm.
go with whatever it is that they're telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, and yeah, just take it all on, and yeah. Parenting, it's never gets easier, does it? There we
No,
are.
and it
No.
certainly feels like, nature's sense of humor in that we're all older parents, and
Yeah, rude.
we being older parents means that we're sort of going through that second puberty, if you like, where the
Yeah, that's
hormones are
right.
flooding out as their hormones are flooding in. So
Yeah, it's
no one's
cruel.
really a bit
Yeah.
sane at the same time, and, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's good times. But yes, Bron was excellent, and she really gave me lots of food for thought. So I'm very grateful that we had her on The Change.
thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.